Splunk, ticker symbol SPLK, that's the stock we're going to be discussing in today's video. This is a business that I've been taking a good look at for quite a while now. I've discussed it a ton with my members, and I've even briefly talked about it on the channel before as well. And I think this stock is extremely undervalued and the market is overlooking it right now. In fact, I made a purchase today itself, bought more shares of Splunk. So yes, I am a shareholder in this stock. And if you are interested to find out when I purchase more or what other stocks I own, consider joining our VIP group, link in the description down below. Anyways, if you appreciate me getting to the point as quick as possible in this video, hit the like button. That's the best way you can thank me, and it helps the channel out tremendously. So, getting into it, here's the breakdown analysis. This is what I really want to discuss in this video. Oh, and timestamps are in the description down below. If you want to skip ahead, be my guest. So first off, I want to talk about the trends in big data. So this is actually kind of important to understand. And once you have a good understanding of what big data is and how important it is, it'll really give you a grasp of why Splunk is so important. And that kind of leads us to our second point here. Why Splunk? Why am I so interested in this business? I'll share that with you guys. And then finally, price prediction. We'll talk about my outlook for Splunk stock, where I see this going, and why I think this is severely undervalued today. So we got a really informative video for you. If this sector is kind of foreign to you, if SaaS companies, big data, all these terms are out of this world to you, don't worry, stick around. I'll try to explain it as the best I can so you get a good understanding of why businesses like this are ones you probably want to have some exposure to in your portfolio. So to start us off, let's first discuss the trends in big data. So really there's two buzzwords that you see a lot of tech companies throw out there now. Big data is one, and SaaS, software as a service, that's another one. Cloud, of course, that one's just everywhere now. Everyone's a cloud player. But oftentimes you see companies throw these terms in because they know it's going to gather attention from investors. But when it comes to Splunk, they're actually a business. Their model is actually focused around these things. So they're not just another company throwing these buzzwords out there. They're actually a company that works with these buzzwords, and I'll explain that in a second. So in a world where every and any electronic device shares data, we have a growing need to capture, analyze, and use this data. Think about it, with the introduction of technologies like 5G, we are going to be an even more connected world, and even more data will be transmitted between devices, and there's a growing need to analyze this data. Now, big data is essentially just, like the name says, a whole bunch of data. It's categorized, uncategorized, filtered, unfiltered. It's just data coming in at massive rates. And you need businesses to actually go in there and do something with this data so that it's usable. Now here's what the industry for big data looks like going into 2027. You can see strong compounded growth year over year with a total market size of over $100 billion in just a few years. With the introduction and huge adoption of cloud, especially from 2020, because of everything shifting from work to home and remote work, there's more data now than ever before, and we could surpass that $100 billion milestone for this industry much sooner than initially expected. So I don't think I really need to go much further in here. I think at this point you should be convinced that big data is the future and it's a massive growth industry. Let's leave that where it is for now. The other big buzzword I mentioned was SaaS, software as a service. All this really means, guys, is recurring revenue, typically annual recurring revenue, or ARR. If you think about the most sought after businesses today, the ones that investors want to flood into, they typically are playing in the cloud space. They typically are a SaaS business or have a big component of their business that is SaaS. This is because this model has been proven to be extremely successful and profitable over the long term. So this is the idea, right? You have a customer and you're trying to sell them a product. You can either sell them this product today, have them pay up front for the product, $100, that's it, they own the product. Now, essentially, you've lost that customer because they bought your product, they're gone. Yeah, you have contact with them, you can reach out to them every so often, but they're like, well, I already bought it. Like, what more do you want from me, right? Now, here's where SaaS comes in, because you can say, hey, Mr. Customer, how about you pay this on a recurring basis? So that means less upfront cost to you. So instead of paying $100 upfront, let's just say you pay $10 a year for the next 10 years. Now, you may think, okay, so that means you're going to be waiting for this revenue for 10 years. And yeah, that's true. But here's where the value comes in. During that time span, you can come in and say, hey, we have a new product you can add in as a service, and instead of $10 a year, you'll be paying $15 a year. And they're like, okay, that's not too bad, I'll do that. And then later on, something new comes out, a new upgrade, new product line. There's a lot of things that can come up that can entice a customer to upgrade or add as an add-on, and maybe that $10 turns into $20, $40, $50, maybe they end up paying $100 a year in recurring revenue now because they see the value for your services. They want to have more and more services built into that product. And guess what? They're happy because their upfront costs are low. You're happy because you're earning a lot more from this customer now. And investors are happy because you're making a ton of money at your business. It's a win-win situation for everyone involved. Not to mention, SaaS models also come with a ton of other benefits in terms of the actual software that they're subscribing to, because they're always going to have the latest and greatest versions, they're always going to have upgrades typically. There's benefits, and companies realize this, which is why many companies will choose to go with a SaaS model, even if it costs them more over the long term, and even if you're upfront with them and say, hey, this, you can pay for it today for $100, or you can pay for it over the long term. It's going to cost you $150, but your annual payments are going to be low and you're going to get a ton of value over the long term. They're going to be like, okay, you know what? It costs us more over the long term, but we're saving that money now. We can use that money to invest in other parts of the business. Sure, we'll do that. So this is why SaaS is important. And when it comes to big data, SaaS is the king model that you want to use with big data analytics. So now let's get into Splunk. Why Splunk? Why am I looking at this business? Well, simply put, Splunk is a business that directly fits in with big data and software as a service, cloud. Throw in your favorite buzzword here, Splunk is a player in that space. The core of the business is with big data. They actually provide analytics for big data, and they're currently shifting to a SaaS model. So again, that's going to be good for them over the long term. With Splunk, you can take data from any device, throw it into their platform, and the tool will be able to categorize this, sort this out, filter this, and provide analytics that make it usable, thus helping improve efficiency for the customer. Think about it. As an organization, you have a ton of devices, tons of data coming in and being sent here and there, and you want to actually have a tool that can categorize all that data so you can use it to your advantage, improve things, be more efficient, save some money. And that's kind of where Splunk really sells itself with. Now, when it comes to big data specifically, Splunk is actually one of the leaders in this space, and they have no signs of slowing down. Next year, they expect to see 20% growth, and I think this will actually be even higher as their business keeps growing. You'll also notice that revenue is expected to be around $2.62 billion. So just imagine the market, like we looked at previously, is expected to grow to over $100 billion, and that's just for big data, which is a part of Splunk's business. So the potential here is massive. In fact, as of 2020, Splunk predicted that their TAM, total addressable market, is already nearing $100 billion. So this is going to increase exponentially over time, and right now they have a small piece of this, but if they just keep growing at that 20% clip, which I think they can for a very long time, this will be one of the most successful software companies in my opinion. The potential for Splunk, in my opinion, is huge, and the market is just not realizing this right now. From the highs of over 220 in September, Splunk is down over 20% still, and this tells me investors don't understand what's happening. From a high level, you see stats like this, where Splunk missed on earnings in recent quarters, and their revenue is down year over year. So you may be wondering, how can revenue be down year over year for a company that's supposed to be growing massively in a massive growing industry? Clearly something's wrong with this business, and clearly it makes sense to sell. That seems to be the norm, and that seems to be what most investors are doing right now. But the good news is, if you look at the details, you see that their cloud ARR, annual recurring revenue, is actually up massively. The growth here is so strong, and it shows no signs of slowing down. So this means the transition that they're doing is going really well. In fact, they are growing their SaaS model faster than other high growth players out there like Workday, Salesforce, and ServiceNow. So this drop in revenue right now, this declines you're seeing year over year, is because they're shifting to a subscription SaaS model. So remember, we said instead of getting that $100 up front, they're getting $10, for example, but it gives them the potential to upsell and add services onto that and possibly raise prices over time, which in the end will result in more profits, more revenues. Now, I said the word profits, and I do need to touch on this for a second here. Splunk is currently not a profitable business. They don't have positive net income. However, they do have positive free cash flow, which is a good sign to me that the company is able to still generate some money. And right now, they're focusing on reinvesting that into the business and growing the business. And as an investor holding this stock, I'm completely fine with that. So now let's touch upon the price prediction outlook for Splunk stock. So now to get a good idea of where Splunk sits in this market and where the stock can go, so we can make a proper prediction on what the upside is, I actually want to spend a few minutes to compare it to its biggest competitors, Datadog and Elastic NV. So here's the comparison I put together to really visualize these companies. And we can see the largest company right now is Datadog, but it's extremely expensive at a 43 price to sales. Elastic is the smallest company of the bunch, but also expensive at a 20 price to sales with only around $700 million in revenue. Splunk, in my opinion, has the best balance here. They have the most revenue, they're not the largest market cap, so they have more room to grow here. They have a good growth rate of over 20% expected, and they are incredibly cheap from a price to sales perspective of around a 10, which is a fraction of its peers. So looking at this, Splunk looks very undervalued to me despite being the largest from a revenue perspective. And I think sooner or later investors will realize this and they'll say, oh wait, Splunk is still growing strong. They're successfully shifting their model to SaaS. They're still a leader in this space. So why are we paying such a big premium for companies like Datadog and Elastic again? When that realization happens, I think that's when you're going to see a ton of money flood back into Splunk. The stock is probably going to shoot up much higher. And who knows, maybe that happens with their next earnings report, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that. This could actually play out for a little bit of time. But I think within the next, few quarters, we should see Splunk back on track, growing year over year, because now that ARR part of the business is building up more and more. And investors that just see headlines are finally going to see, hey, there's growth once again, and the stock's going to start moving again. Now, for our price prediction, I kind of want to be a bit conservative here, okay? So we see Datadog at like a 40 plus, we see Elastic at a 20. Let's say Splunk is at a 50 in price to sales. This is extremely conservative and undervalued still compared to its peers. If that's the case, it would actually put Splunk stock at nearly $250 per share. This means that at today's prices, that would be a 44% upside, and in relative short period of time, this could be realized as investors start to see where Splunk is going over time. And remember, this is with a conservative price to sales of 15. If I look at something like a 20 or 25, we could see much higher prices. We could see the stock potentially double or even more than that in the next few years if they keep executing like I expect. So like I said in the beginning, I personally own Splunk stock. I'm bullish on this stock, and who knows, over the short term, we may see more volatility. After the next earnings, we may see another sell-off, and if that happens, guess what? I'll be buying a ton more Splunk. But I think long-term, this business is looking really good. They have an incredible brand. They have an incredible model. The CEO seems to be someone that's focused here on growing the business. And I like everything that I see about this company. So it is definitely one worthy of being in my portfolio. Anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts on Splunk in the comments down below. Let me know if you enjoyed this video and you found any value, and if you now understand things like big data and SaaS a bit better from my explanations. Love to hear from you in the comments below. But either way, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to invest positively, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.